Good morning. I'm delighted to welcome you to CCBC's Be More Bold Conference for Entrepreneurs and Innovators. Just as we strive to always think big and bold at CCBC, we are proud to offer a conference minted in that same spirit. Big, bold solutions for Baltimore area startups and growth companies. As the pandemic slowly fades from being an oppressive daily presence to a disturbing memory, the time is right for those of you who are forward-thinking, and I dare say, if you were not forward-thinking, you would not be here today, to seize this moment and make it your own. Today, we are here to reunite, rethink, and rebuild. We certainly want to thank our college organizers, Dr. Dennis Sullivan and Director Angela Kivas, as well as our signature sponsors, the Ratcliffe Foundation, TEDCO, and the Economic Alliance of Baltimore. They have signed on to this today because they recognize that CCBC is the largest provider of workplace education and training in the Baltimore region. The road to economic recovery and revitalization flows right through our front door. Our college is a natural resource for startups and entrepreneurs, and we invite you to cross over that threshold with us today. Somewhere along the way, I picked up and adopted for CCBC the slogan, "Go big or go home." My guess is that if you are with us today, that slogan is or should become your mantra as well. We welcome you to the conference. Thank you for joining us for a go big kind of day, for we surely don't intend to let you go home before it's over. Welcome.
Welcome, and first let me thank Dr. Kurtinitis, Dennis Sullivan, and Angela Kivas for hosting this year's conference. The Philip E. and Carol R. Radcliffe Foundation have been for nearly 2 decades supporting entrepreneurial initiatives, donating more than $24 million, providing training, seed funds, and other resources to help aspiring entrepreneurs, innovators, and small business owners. We've been supporting CCBC and their Center for Business Innovation for the last 5 years, and we are delighted to be part of today's Be More Bold Business Conference for Entrepreneurs and Innovators. This event is an incredible opportunity to bring together entrepreneurs, business owners like yourself, a variety of resources in the area, including TEDCO, the Economic Alliance for Greater Baltimore, and the impressive array of talented guest speakers to help you grow and learn from each other. We wish you all the best in your entrepreneurial ventures, and we want to encourage you to dream big, expand your network, and enjoy the journey. Take advantage of this conference, learn a lot, share what you know, support the ecosystem, and have a great day.
Hello and welcome. My name is Dennis Sullivan, Executive Director of CCBC's Center for Business Innovation, and I want to welcome you to Be More Bold Business Conference for Entrepreneurs and Innovators. We are very excited to have our keynote speaker here with us today, Ozzie Newsome, Executive Vice President of Personnel for the Baltimore Ravens. Stellar career with the Cleveland Browns. Before that, with Alabama, went on to become GM at the Baltimore Ravens, winning not one Super Bowl championship, but 2. He has flourished at every point of his career at Alabama, Cleveland Browns, and as GM of the Ravens, and became the league's first African-American GM. Ozzie Newsome, we're excited to have you with us here today.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure for me to be able to sit here and have a nice conversation with you.
Thank you. Well, I want to talk to you about building teams, building winning teams. You've had amazing success doing that, and I'd like to talk about how we can apply that in business too. One of the first questions I like to ask people is, what was your first job as a kid?
Oh, my first job was working at my high school, um, doing lawn care work, doing janitorial work. It was a job that paid $1.60 an hour. You was able to work for 40 hours a week, and that was probably back in the early 70s. And that $1.60 an hour went a long ways.
Well, you had terrific success with the Cleveland Browns. What made you or what interested you in working in the front office in the NFL?
Well, as I was getting close to retirement of being an active player on the field, I was asked by Mr. Modell if I wanted to remain with the organization. The year before that, Gene Stallings, who had became the head coach at the University of Alabama, approached me about joining his staff to coach the wide receivers. So I had the inkling that I wanted to stay in sports and stay in either coaching or player personnel. And when I started to work for Mr. Modell in Cleveland under Bill Belichick, who became the head coach in 1991, then I was allowed to do coaching and personnel, and it really helped to build my foundation.
One of the things I found very interesting is that when you retired as a football player, then you were in the end zone and your job back in the end zone, but this time your job was to have a clipboard in your hand, jotting down every player's number, where they were lining up on every play. That must have been difficult. Going from your experience as a player, now you're in the dog pound, but there you're in the dog pound with a clipboard, keeping track of all those stats.
Well, it's called advanced scouting, and it's a characteristic or a trait that you had to develop. And I had some good mentors. Don Manili was a guy. Tom Dimitrov Sr. was a guy, along with Mike Lombardi and Ernie Accorsi. They taught me how to use my eyes. As a player, I had to only concentrate on the guy I was blocking, whether he was a defensive end or an outside linebacker, or a guy I was trying to defeat, whether he was a safety or corner. But now I had to have full field vision. But I learned that as a player, in order to be an effective player, you need to understand what the defense is trying to do. And that way you can go out and be successful in running your route or making the block. So having the knowledge of what all 11 guys are doing as a player makes you a better player. And that helped me when I became an advanced scout, being able to look at 11 guys and to know when somebody was out playing in a position that they shouldn't have been in based on what the other 10 guys were doing.
As an executive, who's had the biggest influence on you?
Well, I mean, you have to start with my parents. They create the values in my life. And then I played for Coach Bryant at Alabama. And the things that he taught me and all the other players that came along with me, before me and after me, we all think and feel the same way of the lessons that he talked to us about winning is everything, and team is the most important thing, and trying to get 10% better every day at what you do, and being appreciative of what your grandparents, what they had done, and can you give what they gave. So all of those lessons I was learning, and then going into the National Football League, Calvin Hill was my roommate. He was 10 years my senior, had the success, and it was good for me to, just to be around him on a day-to-day basis and how he prepared himself. And then you have to count Mr. Modell. And then you come along, and I spent those 5 years with Bill Belichick. And you know about the success of Bill, but, the work ethic, the preparation, and all of those things are what make Bill to be the success that he is today.
Are there specific lessons that you take from your experience with them that you are apply today on a day-to-day basis? Anything that stands out?
Well, yeah, every day is a new day, and you can't live off of yesterday. So, and the other thing is, you got to have good people working with you. So, put in the time to select good people. but allow those people to do their job. Don't be a micromanager. Allow those people to do their job, and do it on their own time limit, and not to be so structured, and I think those are the things that have helped and prepared me to where I am today.
I hear you. In terms of your approach to working with players, recruiting players, what do you look for?
Well, passion. Do they really love the game? When you get a chance to talk to them, are they working to try to get themselves better, but also are they working to get their teammates better? Do they care about their teammates? And the other thing about it, do they carry themselves well off the field? That is as important is how they play on the field, but also how they live off the field.
Are there interview questions that you like to ask? Is there one or two that really is a clincher for you?
No, not really. I think it's marrying what I saw on tape, what I hear when I talk to them, and when I talk to my sources that we have at different colleges. When you marry all of those three things up, then you realize that Jonathan Ogden has probably got a chance to be a really good player because he is physically gifted. And so you take all of those three things and you put them together, and then you come away with decisions on the type of players that you want to pick. And hopefully you're right more times than not.
Yeah, and a lot of people may not realize this, but you also worked in another capacity as a recruiter on campus before you got into the NFL. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the NFL was a little bit different when I was playing. And we as players, we had the opportunity to have all-season jobs. And, basically I went through a process of getting evaluated as to what my strengths and weaknesses were. And Paul Warfield and Calvin Hill invited some companies, to come and have lunch with us and to see if they would be willingness to have use us as interns, for a 3-month period from February to through April. And I was fortunate enough to get hired by East Ohio Gas in the personnel department. And my main responsibility became is that they had a management trainee program. And we would go to different colleges, University of Dayton, University of Miami, HBCUs. We'd go to Ohio State. And what you would have to do is you get a schedule of about 10 to 12 people to interview over a 30-minute period. And, normally after about 15 minutes after I did this for a little bit, I could tell whether that person in my mind would be good enough for me to invite back to Cleveland. But if I didn't think so, at that point, I started to try to help that person to be prepared for the next interview. So it was a chance for me to sit there in front of 21, 22-year-olds, that were in engineering and all different majors, communications, and to be able to make a determination that these young men and women have the skills, because our management trainee programs were people that we would hope that at some point that could become the CEO of the company.
Curious what you look for in those interviews when you were talking to those folks.
Well, you look for instincts, the ability to communicate, the ability to be a problem solver, the ability to be able to work with all types of people. I think those are the things that right off the top of my mind that I would be sitting there as I was asking those questions, and then I would be in my own mind trying to feel if I was getting those answers to the questions when I was talking to those prospective students.
Are there lessons learned from that experience on those college campuses that you apply in your recruiting today?
Well, yeah, I think in anything, it's the person. And you can come away with a good feel about a person. And we talk about our culture here in Baltimore. It's about the people. And so, you walk away and you know what? If I spend 30 minutes with someone, I go, you know what? I'd like to work with that person. So I utilized that when it came into doing evaluation for players. And I think the biggest thing you have to do is be a great listener, and try to acquire as much information as you can. But you allow everybody else to do the talking, and you do all the listening. You absorb all that information, and then you could come away with a good feeling about whether that person is the type of person you want to work with, and the type of person you can bring into the organization, and they will achieve.
Yeah. And how would you describe the culture with the Ravens?
Well, we say play like a Raven, but football is is important. Is the game of football important to you? And if it is, then you're going to be doing everything that you can do to be the best that you can be. And being a good teammate, care for your teammates. What can you do to help your teammates, to make them better? And so you're talking about building a community in that fashion that, it's just not about me and my stats, but it's about the stats and the ability of the player that's next to me. Because in football, you can't be a success if you don't have the other 10 guys working real hard right along with you. The only way I could catch a pass is the offensive line had to be blocking. The running backs got to be picking up blitzes. The quarterbacks got to make a good throw. And my other receivers got to be running routes to make sure those defensive backs are not crowding toward me. So teamwork is so important in football. So you look for someone that when we are out scouting, or when I was at East Ohio Gas, is that who wants to be a part of a team, and where the team is the most important thing.
So interesting with your career. You had a very successful high school career, and you could have gone to other colleges and done very well, got a lot of personal accolades. Instead, you chose to go to Alabama because you wanted to win an SEC championship. Didn't happen. Went to Cleveland and hoping to win a championship there. Had, again, amazing success that you had, but not a championship. Come to the Ravens as GM, win 2 Super Bowl championships. From your experience with throughout your career, what was the difference with the Ravens winning championships compared to your previous experience?
Well, I did experience in high school. I won a state championship when I was a junior, and I was a part of a basketball team that won a state championship. So I had that taste in my mouth, and going to Alabama, they won the national championship the year before I got there. And I went there, and it wasn't about, getting stats. I could have went to a lot of other places where I could have got numbers, but it was the opportunity to play for a national championship. We won the SEC championship, I think, 3 out of the 4 years that we were there. And we finished second twice for the national championship. And my last year, I still got some bitterness about a certain team up north that jumped us in order to get that and keep me from getting it. But, it was an aspiration of mine. And those 4 years at Alabama was unbelievable. And then you go into the Cleveland Browns, and we had the cardiac kids in 1980. And we had to play a red right 88 where Mike Davis, who just passed away, made a great play on an interception on a ball that was thrown to me. And then we get into the mid to late 80s, with Bernie and Ernest Biner and Chip Banks and Clay Matthews. And we went to 3 out of 4 AFC championship games. And a good friend of mine that has become a good friend of mine just happened to be a guy that made plays to beat us in those AFC championship games, John Elway. You knocking at the door 3 times and you come away. And I never will forget when we beat Oakland in the AFC championship game, a beat writer from Cleveland came up to me and he goes, "Well, how does this feel?" I said, "This is the first time I've been in a winning locker room after an AFC championship game, and it feels really good."
And then you win 2 Super Bowl championships with the teams that you built with the Baltimore Ravens. What was the difference?
Well, it comes down to your talent. That first Super Bowl, we had an unbelievable defense, and they didn't think anybody could score on those guys. And, when you got great leadership like Brian was, then he was in charge of the offense. And he said, "Hey, as long as we don't screw it up, then we got a chance to win." We had great special team. So that's how we won that one, because we had just an unbelievable defense, and with two Hall of Famers playing on that with Ray and Ed, and two other Hall of Famers, Shannon Sharp and Rod Woodson, and probably some more guys will probably make it in. And then the next Super Bowl was we got hot, at the right time. Joe Flacco got hot in those playoffs because we won the first one here, then we had to go on the road. And we had lost at New England the year before. But I think those guys, I never will forget when we lost in the AFC Championship game up at New England, and everybody was just so hurt. And, and Ray Lewis, being the leader he got up and said, Lord, don't make no mistakes. So we took that to say, okay, we lost that game. So now we are the ones that's going to have to fix this. And we were able to go back up there and beat those guys, and nothing like riding from the stadium in Foxborough to the airport. What a great feeling that was.
Yeah. Well, your first draft with the Ravens in 1996, you selected Jonathan Ogden and Ray Lewis. In 2002, you selected Ed Reed. Over the years, you've drafted 25 players who have earned Pro Bowl honors. So there's a lot of guys out there who are talented, skilled at what they do. But what is it beyond that you're looking for, that you saw in those guys said that they would be perfect for the Baltimore Ravens?
Well, that was a we thing, because it begins with our area scouts that, go into those schools, put the evaluation on the players, and, have their sources and get all the background information on the players, and then they bring it back to us. So it begins with the area scouts and the great job that they do. And then, there's a partnership that has to happen, and that partnership is myself, the head coach, whether it was Brian Billick, now John Harbaugh, Steve Bisciotti, Art Modell, Dick Cass, Jim Bailey. There's a partnership that goes along with that. And then to have people alongside of me like Shaq Harris, Eric DeCosta, Phil Savage, those people like that. So it's a team effort, and I think we all have that understanding of what we like, and we can sit there and discuss it among each other. And yeah, we may have some differences of opinion, but at the end of the day, we do have this picture in our mind of what type of player that we want to come and be a part of the Baltimore Ravens and this community.
And many of the people you just mentioned are part of what you call the 2020 Club. Do you mind sharing what that's about?
Well, this all started with Belichick in Cleveland, and you wouldn't believe the number of guys. I think that last year we were there. Jim Schwartz was there, who became a head coach. Scott Pioli was there. I could just name so many other guys. We were all working there, and they all started as 20. They was making 20,000. George Kokanis was one of those guys. Eric started out that way, and you know what? We just paid them just enough so that they could eat and probably have a place to live, and probably not a decent place to live. But, we wanted those guys in the building, 18 hours a day. And because that's what we felt like it took, But those guys, they had the proper work ethic that they need, but they had the ability, they wanted to learn how we were doing things. They were hungry. And it's amazing the number of guys that started out that way that went on to become GMs and head coaches in the National Football League.
One of the things I've heard you say about the scouts, coaches that you work with, is that we respect and listen to each other. You hear a lot of people say that, but how does that happen? How do you foster that? How do you make sure that that's happening in meetings, in the building, on a day-to-day basis?
Well, if you walk through this building, it says in about 2 or 3 different places, the team, the team, the team. Well, I'll be willing to offer my input if I thought it was going to be heard and utilized. And that's what we do. If you go out and do the work, then we want to hear what you have to say about the work. We want you to have an opinion. And you know what? And you may be more right than me. And so we have to have the willingness, in which we do, to say, you know what, I could be wrong on this and you can be right. So, our youngsters, they get ownership into what we are doing. They take pride and ownership in their ability to do a job, because at the end of the day, that decision could come down to what they think, not necessarily what I think or what Steve Bisciotti thinks.
And I've heard others describe you where in a meeting, you're the one who's going to be usually the one who sits back, takes in every opinion, and tries to hear what others have to say, not trying to accept your way of thinking. In fact, you've been described as the best listener in the Ravens building.
Well, I think if you, all of the leaders that I've been around are great listeners. They are sponges in their ability to get as much information and allow people to have the freedom to do it. It's one thing to have an opinion, it's another thing to have to make a decision. So you can't not make a great decision unless you acquire all the information that you can get. If you acquire as much information as you can get, then you have a chance to make a good decision, and that's what I tried to do.
And that's one thing I wanted to ask about the decisions you do make. They're very public, and everybody has an opinion about the decisions you make. They're constantly second-guessing decisions you make. They second-guess the decision to hire Brian Billick, John Harbaugh, Joe Flacco. I could go on. And they all worked out. So for you, how do you deal with that type of criticism, second-guessing? How do you know that those decisions that you're making are the best decisions?
Well, I think it's conviction. Number one, I paint this picture of what we want. We paint this picture. And then nobody's going to hit 10 out of 10, but you can hit 8 out of 10, or maybe 8.5 or 9, but no one is going to hit 10 out of 10. So you have this picture, this structure of the type of person that you're looking for. And then you sit there and try to see how many of those boxes you can check. And no one is going to hit them all. And so that's how we go about. And you know what? And we're looking for someone that's going to work well with us. What may work well for us may not work well for Pittsburgh or for the Raiders. And I'll say this, Mike Mayock, who was a longtime guy on the NFL Network, who was a draft guru. And I saw him at an owners meeting after he became the GM of the Oakland Raiders, now the Las Vegas Raiders. And I go, Mike, you know what? It's one thing to have an opinion. It's another thing when you have to make that decision.
Yeah. And what advice would you have for folks in business who are also making very public decisions, perhaps being second guessed quite a bit? You hear the expression, it's lonely at the top, because you have people throwing darts at you. What advice would you have for them when making those tough decisions?
Well, put the work in. Put the work in. Use your instincts. Don't be afraid. At the end of the day, you probably know more about that decision than anyone. And there's two sides to about criticism. They can criticize you, but also they can applaud you. You know what? Listen less to the applause, more to the criticism. But hey, you have all of the information and you've done your work. So have some convictions in your work and your information and go with that, and don't necessarily listen at the noise. There's a lot of noise out there. You don't need to listen at the noise. You need to go with the facts.
You mentioned earlier the influence Bear Bryant had on you. And you even said that he really helped shape you, help you grow up. What did you mean by that?
Well, number one, there were no stars at the University of Alabama. We were all Alabama football players, whether we were African American, white, whatever. We were just a football player there. And the most important thing was the University of Alabama and that football team, not us. We had no room, for egos and stars. And the other thing about it, that if he expected you to be a leader for him, to be a starter for him, then he wants you to understand what those expectations are. And probably the biggest thing that he and I had a discussion going into my last year, where he was a little disappointed in the way I had finished running the 4 quarters that we had. He said, because if you're a leader, you have to be out front. You can't be a guy that's just going to finish. If you're a leader, be up front. bring the rest of the group with you. And I've taken that with me forever.
Yeah. Talk to me more about the lessons that you've learned from your experience, either as a player, GM, that you think would help other business leaders today.
Well, I think you can learn as much from your mistakes and your faults as you can your successes. You go back to that very first draft that we had, and everybody talk about what we did in the first round, but no one talks about what happened in the second round, but I know. And at that point, I made a trade hoping to get a tight end. And I made the trade before it was the time to pick. I had the trade in place, and then the player got picked the pick before the spot that I had. And so I learned the lesson. I've learned that lesson for the last 25 years is that, hey, if I want to make a trade, then I'm only going to make the trade when that player is available, and I would let the other people know that going in. So I think you learn more from, when I dropped the pass, I want to know, why did I drop the ball? Why, I took my eyes off it. You know what? I didn't have my feet underneath. You can learn from your mistakes and your faults. And if you learn from those, then you won't repeat them. The biggest problem that we have as leaders is when you repeat mistakes. You can't be successful in life if you keep repeating the wrong things. The only thing you can be successful at is repeating all the good things.
I imagine you're the type of person who's trying to always learn more, whether it's negotiating tactics, recruiting. What kind of things do you do to try to continue to learn?
Well, there are certain people that I really respect in the business. And when I get the opportunity to have an audience with those people, then I'm all ears, and I'm asking questions, to them to try to, figure how they do things, so, you don't ever quit learning in any business. And if there's an opportunity where there's someone that you think has some value to you, then you need to try to get as much as that information from that person about that value as you can, and don't be the person that's doing all of the talking and come away with, I didn't get nothing from this guy because I was talking the whole time, or this young lady. You know what? Be a sponge, absorb as much information as you can. A lot of can work for you, but the information that you get that don't work, then dismiss it, dismiss it. And so be a good filter with the information that you get.
Back to the old expression, there's a reason why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Well, yeah, that's true. And we always say, hey, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. You got a chance to learn something.
There you go. Well, let me ask you though, when you approach somebody that you want to learn from, how do you go about approaching them? I mean, you're Ozzie Newsome. I think a lot of people would appreciate the fact that you want to learn from them. But perhaps in your earlier days when you were trying to learn from others, how did you approach them?
Well, number one, you go to a person and you tell them, man, I really respect what you've done and how you've done. You talk about their successes, and to say that, what now, and how were you able to do this, and what are some of the things that you use to get there, because you have accomplished something that's huge. And so acknowledge that to that person, and then try to break it down to where now I would love to be able to absorb some of the things that you've done, to help you to be a success at whatever you've done.
One of your pictures, I noticed you had a wristband, and on it, it said, I am second. What does that mean?
Yeah, you saw that. That made crisis number one in my life. And I got that from our chaplain probably 10 years ago. And this is the second one. The first one broke. So that, when someone looks at that and they ask that question, it's an opportunity to say, hey, crisis number one in my life.
How do you apply that in your role?
Oh, I mean, all the values are Christian principles. The book of Proverbs is all about the principles of wisdom, learning wisdom, understanding wisdom, being around people, leading people. So, I just want to think you want to read the best book on leadership, read the Bible. That is the best book that I ever read on leadership.
It is funny how so many books have been written about leadership, and they're often quoting the Bible over and over again. So I appreciate you saying that. And it is amazing. All these great leaders, and what are they quoting? The Bible.
Well, yeah, but that began with me, with my upbringing, with my parents. And, before you could do anything on Sunday, you had to go to church, and then you had to be involved in Bible study. So, it was my parents and the background that I grew up in gave me that foundation. And I'm glad it is, because that's what I've been able to lean on, for 65 years.
Now, for business leaders who are trying to build their own winning teams, what would you say is, the first or second thing that they should be looking in the people that they're hiring? They want to build a successful organization.
Well, you know what? Spend some time trying to decide what type of people you want to work with. Develop that plan in your mind. Who do you want to work with? And everybody can't be of like mind. You need to get some people that are a little bit different, that think differently than you. But you always got to get people that have humility. Humility is important, and so if you're out searching to try to, build a company, build it on humility, on people that are very humble, that, got great work ethic, that appreciate, working with other people, work well in groups. All of that works, and regardless of what industry that you're in, look for humility.
And I think the big question on everybody's minds are we going to the Super Bowl this year?
That's our plan. But I can tell you, as I said earlier today, 31 other teams have those same plans. But I like what we've done. Eric DeCosta has done an amazing job of building his talent. John has done a great job. We lost some really, really good coaches, but John has brought in a great group of coaches to replace them, those guys. So, it's going to be tough. Cleveland's better. Pittsburgh is going to be better. Cincinnati's getting better. We got to play the Chiefs. But you know what? We're up to the challenge, and we like the way I like the way this team is built, and the pieces that have been added. And of course, we got Lamar. And Lamar makes the things a lot bit easier for all of us.
Let me ask you about Lamar, because a lot of people did not see what you and the coaching staff saw early on, but you saw something to say, this is going to be our starter. What stood out where you said, this is going to be our guy?
Well, I think all 32 teams saw what Lamar could do. No one underestimated his talent and his abilities. But, and this is great for people that are in business, what John did with Greg Roman, he stressed Lamar's strengths. We built an offense around Lamar. We didn't try to change Lamar to be like Dan Marino or Joe Montana or one of those guys. We wanted Lamar to be Lamar, and we built a system around him so we were able to accentuate the positives of Lamar. Too many times we get people here and we want to put them in a box and say, this is the way you have to be. You can't always operate that way. And so that's a great lesson is, hey, you got a talented individual. Well, let's build around that talented individual, and we can make this happen. So John and Greg Roman did that.
That is a great lesson that we can apply, that we see on the field, that we can apply in our own businesses. Ozzie Newsome, it has been a pleasure talking with you here today. Enjoyed getting your input, learning more about how you approach building a team, and I'm hoping our people who are listening, watching today, can also apply that into their own businesses. So Ozzie, thank you for taking the time today. Thank you, and I enjoyed the conversation. Wow, What a terrific session with Ozzie Newsome. Up next, we have Anirban Basu, who will be talking about emerging opportunities for entrepreneurs and innovators. And immediately following that, we will begin our concurrent breakout sessions.